Hello and welcome to episode 29. We are just coming to the end of our teen arc, and today I want to try and speak eloquently and briefly, hopefully, about a very sticky situation, which is how do we manage the tension between allowing our young people to make decisions for themselves, autonomous decisions, so they feel empowered, but also hold adult boundaries so that we are neither teaching our children that they are either in control, which from a nervous system perspective is actually overwhelming and can feel pretty unsafe, or that they have no control, which has a very similar effect. And I want to ask if your young person has ever gone into what we would describe as shutdown. And I'm not talking about a neurological condition here. I am talking about when you get the folded arm, humph, one word verbal responses, or no, or I dunno, non-communicative, not looking you in the eye, quiet. I think we can all recognize that in a situation. And what happens when there is something important that as a parent you really want your child to do? And this can be to take on something. It can be about school attendance, medical appointments, joining a club or a group where you want them to expand themselves. And this also works when you really want to stop them from doing something and they just don't want to talk about it. But for simplicity's sake, let's think about when you know, because you're an adult and you have a very well-developed prefrontal cortex, that a certain decision is going to be beneficial for your child in the long term. And the reason you know that is because you've got years of experience and wisdom. And as our brains develop, we develop the ability to have lots of feelings and recognize that those are my bunch of feelings and I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, not to disregard the feelings, but to bring them with you. So you can do something that makes you feel a bit anxious or a bit scared or a bit worried because you know it's going to be good for your health, good for your job, good for your life if you do it. Now, our young people can make decisions. They can look into the future. They can plan. They can do some pretty complicated cognitive things. However, that logical, long-term thinking part of the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until they're 24. And so their experience is much more embodied. It's right in the nervous system. They are much more likely to be responding with how their nervous system is feeling in that moment. And that's a key difference because as an adult, as I said, we can take that nervous system feeling and either reject it entirely, which is not healthy for us, or acknowledge it and hold it, give ourselves ways to feel safe and move forward. But what often pushes a young person into this physical overwhelmed state that I was describing is because that is how they are feeling in that moment. The young people are very affected by context. So you will probably find that you get lovely child mode at home. They're playful, they're huggy, they're kissy, they're laughing, they're messing around. And you see sometimes a different side to them at home. And then we take them into a different context. It could be school, public places, social places, and you get a very, quote, different child. But what your child is doing is adapting their response to the context that they're in. So what happens when you really want your child to do something that's important, and I'm talking about big decisions here that you feel as a parent are very important for their long-term health, well-being, future, and they are giving you that physical shutdown refusal. And I want to share with you a very simple framework to just give you some tools essentially to see how you can work with it. Because you may have experienced this in the past, that the harder you push against that, the more you persuade, and then maybe you go into shaming and trying to make them feel bad about it, or begging or bribing. I have done all of these things and I have had them all done to me. But what's happening on a nervous system perspective is the harder we push in that moment, the bigger their response becomes, the harder they push back. And then nobody's winning. And the word I want you to think of is pause. So P, that stands for pause the immediate demand. So unless it's an actual emergency, we're going to stop trying to get answers or solutions or explanations in that particular moment. We can say, that's okay, we don't need to do this right now. And you're not removing your boundary, because that's very important that as parents, we are holding the boundary, but it is removing the time pressure. A, acknowledge what we see. So rather than telling them how they're feeling, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're overwhelmed, whatever the language would be, but we can acknowledge, I can see you've gone very quiet. I can see you're not comfortable. U is for understand the barrier, and this comes later. So P and A are what we use in the moment, and U comes later. That's our curiosity part. That's often when they're home and some time has passed and you can sense they're in a more receptive, open situation, that we can address what happened and trying to understand and explore what the difficulty is, what led them into that shutdown in the first place. Fear of something, embarrassment, lack of knowledge, trust, feeling like they don't have a choice. Understanding those barriers is our key to help move forward. Because S is for shrinking the next step. So you can use the information that you've got along with your child to help plan, how can we make that next step small and manageable? What do we need to do? And then E, establish what is fixed and what is flexible. Because I am not suggesting as an adult that we are helping our children when we say, oh, it's hard and it's scary and you don't want to do it and you can't think of a way to make it okay, so we don't need to do it. Because that's not how we build resilience in our children. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable, then please do go back and listen to the previous episode on how to build resilient young children. So as adults, it's really important that we are comfortable allowing them to feel discomfort and to move through it in a safe way. So we can clarify with our young person the fixed part. This does need to happen, and here's why. But the flexible part is how we do it, who you see, when you go, the route, if you like. So the destination is fixed, but the way that you get there is the way that we work with our young person to give them confidence on autonomy and power without removing the need for them to do the thing that is going to be really important for them in the future. So that's our PAUSE acronym. Pause in the moment, acknowledge what you can see, understand the barrier later, shrink the next step, and establish with your young person what is fixed and what is flexible. And so it's really important as adults that we understand what's going on in our own nervous systems alongside our child's, because in the moment we will also feel triggered and angry and frustrated. And we need to not go into shutdown, which is why this work is so important, and it can be used in so many different contexts, which is why I really love sharing about it. So to tie things up, our teenagers need both autonomy, they need their freedom and empowerment, but they also need containment. They need us as adults to listen to them, especially when their whole body, their whole demeanour is saying no in that moment. And they also need their adults not to abandon them to just make decisions alone and accept that and never teach our children. Because I guess this is what this is really about. Is by going through this pause process, we are giving our children the tools to work themselves out of these feelings, which is ultimately what we need as we move into adulthood, to honor where we are in that moment and then work backwards to see, okay, how can I go from this to where I ultimately want to be? Because that is a skill for life. And sometimes the best boundary we can hold is, we are going to address this. And we won't win the argument in the moment, but we can remain steady enough to protect their health, build a healthy working relationship between parent and child, and let them gradually become capable of making these kinds of decisions for themselves. And I'm going to say very crucially, what we are also teaching in this is for them not to abandon the way that their body, their physiology and nervous system is feeling in the moment, because when we abandon it, that creates a whole different world of problems for us as we grow older. So this work is not easy, it's not straightforward, but I really hope that this framework gives you a place that you can start, because it's all about developing awareness and then having some practical tools to try and see what works for you. So that's me for today. I hope you'll join me next week, where I'm going to sum up the whole teen arc. What have we learned? What have we still got to learn? What are the tools we take away? And if you have any questions you'd like me to address on the podcast, any comments, drop me an email, hello@youaretheanswer.co.uk. Leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcast, and I would love to hear from you. Bye. Thank you for joining me on You Are the Answer. If today's episode sparked something in you, share it with someone you care about and leave a review to help others find their way back to their body too. For more tools, inspiration and resources to support your journey, head to www.youaretheanswer.co.uk. And until next time, stay connected, stay curious, and remember, you are the answer, and you always have been.